A cold case that has eluded New Jersey authorities for almost 40 years has finally been cracked. Today, authorities announcing they've arrested the mother of a newborn girl abandoned and left to die on Christmas Eve.
Monday, September 7, 1997, began like any other peaceful morning in Albany's Washington Park. Nestled in the heart of the city, the park is a serene retreat for many, a place where people often come to escape the urban rush, to take in the beauty of the trees, the grass, and the tranquility that surrounds the iconic Moses statue. But on this particular morning, that calm was shattered. At around 7:15 a.m., a passerby on their usual morning stroll noticed something strange near the base of the Moses statue. At first, they might have thought it was just another discarded item, left behind by careless visitors. But as they got closer, the horrifying reality became clear. It wasn't just an abandoned item. It was the lifeless body of a newborn baby boy. In an instant, what should have been a peaceful Sunday morning turned into a scene of shock and horror. The passerby quickly contacted the authorities, and Albany police were on the scene in minutes. What they discovered would not only shake the entire community, but leave the city of Albany grappling with questions that would haunt them for years to come. Who could have left this tiny infant here, abandoned and discarded as if his life meant nothing? But before we dive deeper into the mystery, I'd like to ask for a small favor. The statistics show that more than 70% of you watching aren't subscribed to the channel yet. If you're enjoying these deep dives into true crime and want to stay updated on future cases, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow and ensures you don't miss out on any new videos. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the case. The baby, who would later be given the heartbreaking moniker Baby Moses, was found near the very statue that symbolized leadership and protection. But for this baby boy, there was no one to lead him to safety. No one to protect him from the fate he met on that cold September morning. Abandoned without care or comfort, his tiny life was tragically extinguished before it had truly begun. With no clues, no witnesses, and no immediate leads, the investigation was off to a difficult start. The park, normally bustling with activity, was sealed off as detectives and forensic teams meticulously combed through the area, hoping to uncover even the smallest detail that might point them in the right direction. But what they found only deepened the mystery. There were no personal belongings left behind, no birth certificate, and no identifying features that could offer a clue about who this baby was or where he came from. The infant seemed to have been left in the park only shortly before his discovery. But by whom and why? These questions, hanging heavy in the air, would remain unanswered for the time being. When the autopsy report came in, it confirmed what many had feared. The baby had died shortly after birth. But beyond that, the details were frustratingly vague. No clear cause of death, no signs of trauma. The lack of information only added to the heartache felt by the detectives on the case, the forensic experts, and the entire Albany community. This discovery was not just tragic, it was unfathomable. A newborn baby left out in the open, with no one to claim him, no one to care for him, and no one to mourn him. The emotional impact of this incident rippled through the community. How could something like this happen in their own backyard? Vigils were held as residents gathered to grieve for the life that had been taken so soon. But even in their grief, one fact stood out. This baby, who came to be known as Baby Moses, would never have the chance to grow up, to experience life, or even to be given a proper name. As the case dragged on with no new developments, the investigators were left to grapple with a harsh reality. Despite their best efforts, it seemed that Baby Moses' story was one that might never be fully told. What happened that fateful morning? And why was such a vulnerable life discarded so carelessly? These are the questions that lingered in the minds of not only the investigators, but everyone in Albany as the weeks turned into months. Little did they know this case, once so cold, would eventually take a turn no one could have predicted. In the months following the tragic discovery of baby Moses, the Albany Police Department threw everything they had into solving this heart-wrenching mystery. The story of the abandoned infant had sent shockwaves through the city, and investigators knew they had to act fast. Flyers were posted on nearly every corner, in every shop window, urging anyone with even the slightest information to come forward. The media picked up the story, and soon it was being broadcast across local news stations. Every household in Albany was talking about it. Tip lines were flooded with calls, some credible, some not, but each one was followed up in the hope of finding answers. At first, there was optimism. Surely someone would recognize the baby. Or maybe someone knew a woman who had recently been pregnant but no longer had a child. Surely, in a city this size, it wouldn't be long before a vital piece of information broke the case wide open. But, from the very beginning, investigators were faced with a daunting challenge. The location of the discovery, Washington Park, was a popular spot in the city, known for its tranquil atmosphere and frequent foot traffic. On any given day, dozens, if not hundreds, of people would walk near the Moses statue, whether on their way to work, enjoying the park's beauty, or simply passing through. This created a nightmare for detectives. How could they possibly pinpoint who had left the baby there, or when? The scene, though carefully scoured for evidence, was frustratingly sparse. Forensic teams combed through every inch of the area, looking for anything that might provide a clue. Fingerprints, DNA, a piece of clothing, anything. But they found nothing. As days turned into weeks, the frustrations grew. Detectives canvassed the surrounding areas, speaking to anyone who might have seen something suspicious. But no one recalled anything out of the ordinary near the Moses statue around the time the baby was left. No shadowy figures in the early morning hours, no unusual activity. It was as though whoever had abandoned the child had vanished into thin air. The police then turned to the media, issuing public appeals on local television, radio, and in newspapers. They hoped that perhaps someone would recognize the baby or remember a woman who had given birth, but no longer had her child. But despite the media blitz, there were no promising leads. Weeks passed, and with each passing day, the case grew colder. Investigators, still determined, began expanding their search. They scoured hospital records, clinic logs, and medical documents, hoping to identify any mothers who had given birth around the time of baby Moses' death. But, incredibly, there were no immediate matches. It was as if the baby had appeared from nowhere, abandoned in the park without a trace of his origins. Despite the lack of progress, public interest in the case remained intense, at least at first. The community, still reeling from the shock of such a callous act, came together in mourning. Vigils were held, with residents gathering to honor baby Moses and pray for justice. His tiny body had been laid to rest, but his spirit continued to weigh heavily on the hearts of the people. This wasn't just a cold case, it was a symbol of tragedy and unanswered questions. But as time wore on, the media moved on, and new stories took over the headlines. For the Albany Police Department, though, the case remained an open wound. Investigators continued to follow up on any leads that trickled in, but with fewer resources and mounting frustration, it seemed that baby Moses would join the growing list of Albany's unsolved mysteries. By the early 2000s, with no witnesses, no suspects, and no forensic evidence tying anyone to the scene, the case had officially gone cold. It appeared as though baby Moses might never receive the justice he deserved. But in the early 2020s, something changed. Significant advancements in forensic technology, particularly in DNA analysis, began to revolutionize the way cold cases were handled. Suddenly, cases that had once seemed unsolvable were being cracked open with the help of these breakthroughs. The baby Moses case, once buried under layers of frustration and dead ends, was about to be brought back into the spotlight. With modern DNA techniques now available, detectives revisited the small, seemingly inconclusive pieces of evidence they had collected decades earlier. Among them was a DNA sample taken from the baby. At the time, the technology simply wasn't advanced enough to do much with it, but now everything had changed. This time, the tests revealed something they hadn't been able to detect before: a match. In 2024, more than 2 decades after the baby had been abandoned, that DNA sample led investigators to the mother. Her name? Carrie Mazuka. Mazuka, now 52 years old and living a seemingly quiet life in Altamont, New York, had managed to avoid suspicion for nearly 3 decades. For years, the mystery of baby Moses' identity had loomed over Albany, with no sign of closure. But everything changed in 2024 when a breakthrough in DNA technology linked her conclusively to the infant found in Washington Park in 1997. With this critical piece of evidence finally in hand, detectives knew they had to act swiftly. The moment they received confirmation from the lab, a new urgency gripped the case. The case, once buried under layers of cold files and unanswered questions, was now burning hot again. Investigators wasted no time. Armed with the new DNA evidence, they moved quickly to arrest Carrie Mazuka on a Saturday morning in September 2024. Imagine the scene. For over 27 years, Mazuka had lived quietly in Altamont, blending into the fabric of her community. She had no known criminal history, and those who knew her described her life as unremarkable. But behind this seemingly ordinary existence lay a dark secret that she had carried with her all those years. How could someone live with such a burden, knowing what had been done? When police arrived at her home to arrest her, the quiet neighborhood was about to witness a shocking event. The same woman who had gone unnoticed for so long was now being taken into custody, her alleged crime from 1997 finally catching up with her. The charge? Second-degree murder. This charge was more than just a legal formality. It revealed the gravity of what prosecutors believed had transpired all those years ago. Second-degree murder isn't simply about negligence or abandonment. It suggests something far more disturbing: intent or extreme recklessness. Prosecutors were not just claiming that Mazuka had abandoned her newborn out of desperation. They were asserting that she had knowingly left him in a situation that would lead to his death. The decision to press for second-degree murder showed that authorities believed Mazuka's actions went beyond abandonment. And that wasn't all. In addition to the murder charge, Mazuka was also accused of concealment of a human corpse. This charge implied a deliberate attempt to hide the truth about the baby's death. Had she not only abandoned her baby, but also tried to cover up the evidence of her crime? The authorities certainly seemed to think so. They also charged her with tampering with physical evidence, suggesting that they believed she had taken steps to alter, destroy, or hide the evidence surrounding her baby's death. The community of Altamont was left reeling. How could this woman, who had lived among them quietly for nearly 3 decades, be capable of such a horrific crime? Those who knew her were shocked. To them, Mazuka had been a seemingly ordinary neighbor, living an uneventful life in a small town. But her arrest brought an end to that perception. A new, darker image of Mazuka began to form, one that would leave lasting scars on the community. The courtroom atmosphere was thick with tension as Mazuka was arraigned in Albany County Court. The charges laid against her were severe: second-degree murder, concealment of a human corpse, and tampering with physical evidence. The judge ordered her to be held without bail, given the seriousness of the allegations. For the first time in nearly 30 years, baby Moses was closer to getting justice. But with the arrest came a flood of new questions. What exactly had happened on that tragic day in 1997? Why had Mazuka abandoned her newborn in Washington Park? Was it an act of desperation? Or was there something more sinister behind her actions? And had she acted alone, or were there others involved who had yet to be brought to justice? For the people of Albany, this arrest brought back painful memories of that fateful morning when baby Moses was found. The public interest that had waned over the years reignited with a fervor. Local news stations, which had long since moved on from the story, suddenly found themselves covering every development once again. Residents recalled the emotional impact of the baby's discovery. A vulnerable, nameless child, abandoned in a public park, his life cut tragically short. But now, after nearly 27 years, the case was seeing a resurgence, and this time, it was not just the local police working to uncover the truth. The investigation had spanned multiple agencies over the years, including the Albany Police Department, the New York State Police, the FBI, and the Albany County District Attorney's Office. Each agency had played a critical role in keeping the case alive, even as the trail grew colder and colder. But it was the advancements in forensic technology, particularly DNA analysis, that ultimately broke the case wide open. What was once inconclusive evidence had now turned into the key to solving one of Albany's most heartbreaking mysteries. The collaborative effort between law enforcement and the scientific community had finally provided the answers that so many had long hoped for, but never truly expected. At this stage, however, many details remained unclear. While Mazuka's arrest provided some answers, it left others unresolved. What were the exact circumstances surrounding the baby's death? Had Mazuka acted alone, or were there others involved? And perhaps most importantly, what had motivated her to leave her newborn in such a tragic situation? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think drove her to such actions? Do you believe more people could have been involved? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. As the legal process unfolds, this arrest marks just the beginning of a new chapter in the Baby Moses case. To stay updated on the latest developments, including the upcoming trial, and what new revelations might surface, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video, share it with others who might be following this case, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future updates. We'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, feel free to check out our other cases that are appearing on the screen right now. Make sure you stay connected for more intriguing true crime stories, and until next time, take care.